Now today we have a super fun video to go through, and that's because we're going to be going over one of my favorite high income ETFs across the entire market, and as of right now there are quite a few high income ETFs to choose from. The ETF we're talking about is QQQI, or the NEOS Nasdaq-100 high income ETF, which I personally have been buying pretty consistently ever since it started trading early last year. Now, the provider of the fund, NEOS Funds, was nice enough to sponsor today's video, but I'm not being paid to talk positively or negatively about this ETF, but instead just to share with you guys the facts, go over what this ETF is, how it works, and then later on towards the end of the video, share with you guys my personal thoughts on the ETF, and if I would personally find it a fit in my long-term portfolio. So trust me, if you guys are dividend investors and if you are seeking high income generation, you are definitely going to want to stick around for this one. Now, just to get right into it, even though a lot of you guys watching this video probably either have already looked into this one or maybe even already own some shares of it, let's go over the ETF in full and understand how it works, how it generates so much income, or at least seeks to, and everything else involved. So first, it says the NEOS Nasdaq-100 high income ETF seeks to generate high monthly income in a tax efficient manner with the potential for equity appreciation. Now, the reason I think I've gravitated so much towards these NEOS funds in general, like QQQI or SPYI for example, is simply because these ETFs basically are offering, or at least seeking to offer, exactly what I'm looking for in my long-term portfolio. I know there's some investors out there that want massive income generation or massive growth potential, but for me in my long-term portfolio, I want to have high income generation that's as tax efficient as possible, and then along with that, the potential for equity appreciation as sort of a bonus is always definitely appreciated. Now again, depending on what you're looking for as far as either stocks or ETFs go, that's going to matter quite a bit when it comes to stock picking or ETF picking, and that's why I always recommend you guys watch videos like this one, learn a little bit more about the ETFs, how they work, what they have to offer, and ask yourself, is this what I'm looking for? Now, some more information about QQQI. It has a 0.68% total expense ratio, which is definitely right in line in my opinion with some of these higher income ETFs across the market. The distribution frequency is monthly, which is awesome. Again, I'm looking to build out a long-term portfolio that's going to be paying my bills sometime in the future. So monthly payout distribution frequency is definitely a plus. It's been trading since the beginning of last year, so there is a decent amount of data to go off of. We can look through all the distributions here in a second and see what it's done since inception. So the fact that the ETF is not necessarily brand new is kind of nice, just again to sort of dig into what it's offered so far. Now next, to dig a little bit deeper into the ETF, it offers high monthly income generation. QQQI aims to generate high monthly income by investing in the constituents of the Nasdaq-100 index and implementing a data-driven call option strategy. Now, ETFs like this one and others that offer exposure to super high quality indexes like the Nasdaq-100, which a lot of us more income focused investors probably wouldn't have much exposure to in our long-term portfolios, just because the Nasdaq-100 is much more growth oriented. But with ETFs like this one that implement a data-driven call option strategy, it utilizes the high quality underline of the Nasdaq-100, but seeks to generate a ton of income with that option strategy. Now, tax efficiency, this is also very important, especially when we're talking high income generating products. It says QQQI utilizes NDX index options classified as Section 1256 contracts, 60% long-term, 40% short-term capital gains, and fund managers may seek to take advantage of tax loss harvesting opportunities. Next, it says upside potential. Like I said, as far as us dividend or income-focused investors, that's sort of a secondary goal of ours, but it doesn't hurt to see the portfolio grow over time on its own too. It says QQQI aims to capture a portion of the Nasdaq-100's upside when the index rises. And lastly, professional option management to leverage the deep expertise and research of NEOS, combining decades of experience managing option-based ETFs. I don't think a lot of us investors really think about the actual work and time and energy it takes to actually manage a portfolio that utilizes option strategies like this one. It's not easy, and that's why I'd much rather just pay a small total expense ratio and have exposure to this entire strategy. Now, to sum that up, QQQI equals the two of these, seeks full replication of the Nasdaq-100 index, which again, you have to ask yourself, do you want exposure to that? I personally, as I always say, want a ton of exposure to the Nasdaq as well as the S&P 500. That's just what I personally am looking for. But along with that, data-driven option overlay seeking high monthly income generation and upside equity participation. Now, a potential use case, it says this ETF could be considered as an alternative to existing core equity allocations to provide a tax-efficient monthly income stream, which is amazing in my opinion, while maintaining the opportunity for upside participation when the market conditions warrant. And again, just because these key features are exactly what I'm looking for, I'm not saying that they are or need to be what you guys are looking for. I'm just saying that ever since I started investing, my strategy has remained more or less the same. I want to buy into stocks and ETFs that pay me income. That income is hopefully as tax efficient as possible, and the potential upside along with that as a secondary goal. That's my objective. Now, some more important information about the NEOS Nasdaq-100 high income ETF. The distribution rate as of now is 14.65%, which is definitely up there in the very high yield territory. I know these days there's ETFs that yield much more in this, but again, you have to always weigh out the risks that are involved with the underlying and everything else included. Now, the trailing 12 month is 14.25%. Now, the distributions are also pretty consistent, which I absolutely love. I know it doesn't make too much of a difference whether an ETF or even a stock for that matter pays out a certain amount this month and maybe a little bit less or more the next month, as long as it evens out over time. I understand that, but for me, buying shares of QQQI and at least knowing historically, which we can't necessarily assume is going to happen in the future, but historically around 60 cents per share per month has been paid long-term to us investors that have been buying this one for a while. Now, the next thing I really like about this ETF is the tax efficiency, especially when we look into the supplemental tax information 19A-1 notices. You can see every single distribution that this ETF has offered to investors since it started trading, and as of right now, it says in connection with the most recent payment of 62.82 cents, and this was payable on June 27, 2025, to shareholders of record of June 25, 2025. It is anticipated that 98% of such dividend will be return of capital, and then down here it breaks down exactly what the actual breakdown is of the distribution. And again, just because return of capital is something that I'm looking for in my portfolio, and that's just because I'm looking to defer paying taxes on my income today, funds that offer return of capital are absolutely amazing for that. The Nasdaq-100 high income ETF has become a staple in my long-term portfolio, and I've made it very clear that I intend to try to get to a point to where I own 2,000 shares of this one someday. And even though I have a long way to go to get there as of right now, I'm going to keep buying more and more of this one, especially hopefully if the prices dip soon, I can buy it at a cheaper price. But if it's not clear already, this ETF is one of my favorite ETFs. I mean, it also won the 2025 Best New Active ETF of the Year, and this was an award from ETF.com. This ETF has become very, very popular in the dividend investing community and really has offered the best of both worlds for investors that do want the potential total return and for investors that want exposure to an ETF that offers a ton of income generation, or at least seeking a ton of income generation right from day one. So what are my thoughts on this one? Do I own it? Of course I own this ETF. I absolutely love it. I do want to keep adding more and more Nasdaq-100 exposure to my long-term portfolio, but I want to do so in a high income format. So ETFs like this one have been amazing for my long-term portfolio and have offered me a ton of monthly income generation, which I've used to buy more shares of this one or whatever other shares of stocks and ETFs I personally want on that given day when the market's open. So now that we talked about one of my favorite ETFs, the Nasdaq-100 high income ETF, we talked about how the ETF works, what it has to offer, and even my personal thoughts on it. I lastly, most importantly, have a question for you guys down below. When it comes to the Nasdaq-100 high income ETF, do you own it? Would you own it? What are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like in it and subscribe for more future content like this.